Imagine you've just won, like, the biggest award in your industry. The confetti drops from the ceiling.
Oh, yeah, the crowd is on their feet applauding.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're holding that heavy, shiny trophy, and you are absolutely on top of the world.
It's the climax of a perfect story.
It really is.
Mm-hmm.
But then, Monday morning rolls around.
Right. Back to reality.
You're back at your desk. The confetti is swept up, the applause is completely gone, and you suddenly realize something terrifying.
Which is?
You still have, like, 30 years of a career left? What do you do now?
Oh, man. It's the ultimate now what moment.
Yeah.
Because we're so hardwired as a culture to celebrate the summit,
Yeah.
We completely forget about the descent or the next mountain entirely.
Right, because the summit is clean.
Exactly. It's a highly visible narrative of victory, but the decades that follow, I mean, that's where the real quiet, muddy work actually happens.
Exactly. And that exact question, what happens after the peak, is what we've been absolutely obsessing over lately. Welcome to the deep dive. And I should say right up front, this deep dive is brought to you by Business Link Media Group.
Which is actually perfect because we're doing something really special today.
We are. We're staying in-house.
Yeah, we're pulling back the curtain on our own organization to give you an exclusive behind-the-scenes look at a legacy program we are incredibly proud of here at Business Link.
If you're doing business anywhere in Southern Ontario, you are probably very familiar with the Business Link 40 Under 40 Business Achievement Awards.
Definitely.
We founded this program way back in 2003. And over the last 2 decades, we've handed that trophy to 920 individuals.
That's a lot of hardware.
It is. 920 incredibly driven young leaders who are shaping industries, launching startups, and building our communities. But today, we aren't talking about winning that initial award.
Right, we're exploring the after.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're diving into the Alumni Impact Award, or the AIA, which we just launched in 2023.
Because early success is, relatively speaking, easy to spot and easy to celebrate.
It's flashy.
It is flashy, but learning how to sustain that momentum, how to evolve your leadership and adapt over 10, 20, or 30 years, that's the real secret to a meaningful career.
For sure.
The Alumni Impact Award was created to comb through our massive network of past recipients and find the people who didn't just peak at 35,
All right, the ones who kept going.
Yeah. We're looking for the leaders who use that early recognition merely as a launch pad for sustained long-term impact.
Okay, let's unpack this philosophy because it completely changes the way you look at success.
It really does.
Think about it like the music industry. Winning a 40 Under 40 award is a lot like an artist dropping a massive platinum-selling debut album.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy. You've proven you have talent, but you haven't proven you have staying power.
Exactly. That's totally right. Suddenly you're on the map, you're playing the big arenas, everyone knows your name.
But the true test of an artist's greatness isn't that first album.
Right.
It's their entire discography over the next 20 years. Do they evolve their sound when the industry shifts? Do they find new audiences?
Or do they just keep playing the same 3 chords until they become like a novelty act?
Right. And shifting our perspective to look at the whole discography fundamentally changes what we're measuring.
How so?
Well, with the AIA, we move the focus entirely away from a single standout year. We aren't looking at a snapshot anymore. We're analyzing a moving picture.
I like that, a moving picture.
Yeah, we're measuring progression. We want to know how a leader handles entirely new, unprecedented challenges while staying grounded in the core values that made them successful in the first place.
Right.
The central question of the Alumni Impact Award is simple, really. Does your impact scale with your experience?
And to see what that kind of career endurance looks like in practice, we don't have to speak in hypotheticals. We just have to look at our inaugural AIA recipient from 2023, Jim Deodati.
Jim is the absolute blueprint for the long game.
He really is. So Jim is a past 40 Under 40 honoree who originally built his reputation on a very successful foundation in entrepreneurship.
Right.
He was building and operating businesses, doing what entrepreneurs do best. But then he completely pivots.
A massive pivot.
Yeah. In 2010, he runs for mayor of Niagara Falls, wins, and has held that position ever since. he's become one of the most recognizable, enduring leaders in the entire region.
And if we connect this to the mechanics of municipal leadership, his tenure hasn't just been about, keeping the lights
Or
on.
maybe sure the potholes are filled.
Exactly. His time in office has been defined by pushing massive transformational projects. For example, he has been a relentless advocate for bringing expanded WIGO train service into the region.
Which is huge.
Oh, completely game-changing.
Yeah, for anyone listening who isn't familiar with Southern Ontario Transit, the WIGO train is this massive commuter rail network that connects the surrounding regions directly into the economic engine of downtown Toronto.
Right.
Getting a region plugged into that grid is a total game changer for local businesses and property values.
It absolutely is. And beyond transit, he supported the development of the new South Niagara Hospital and championed bringing a university presence right into the downtown core of the city.
But here's where my brain gets stuck.
Okay, what is it?
If you're listening to this and you work in the private sector, you know how incredibly frustrating government red tape can be.
Oh, yeah. It's notorious.
Right. So how does the agile move fast and break things mindset of an entrepreneur actually survive in the slow-moving, heavily regulated world of government?
That's the million-dollar question.
Like, how do you take an entrepreneur, drop them into a bureaucracy, and still manage to get these massive, decade-long infrastructure projects across the finish line?
It's a fascinating transition because, on the surface, those two worlds seem totally incompatible.
Totally.
But if you look closely at Jim's entrepreneurial foundation, which was built on understanding tight operations, spotting growth opportunities, taking calculated risks, you see it's actually the perfect training ground for modern governance.
Really? How so?
Think about it. An entrepreneur knows how to sell a vision to skeptical investors, right?
Yeah.
They know how to hustle for capital. In the world of a mayor, hustling for capital just translates to fighting for provincial or federal funding grants.
Oh, that's brilliant. I never thought about it like that. You can't just mandate a new hospital. You have to pitch it like a startup looking for Series A funding from the province.
Exactly. True civic endurance isn't just surviving election cycle, shaking hands, and cutting ribbons.
Right.
It's utilizing that raw entrepreneurial grit to keep pushing the boulder up the hill on those transformational projects. And Jim had to push that boulder while navigating some of the most profound crises imaginable.
Right, we can't skip over that. Because while he's fighting for these decade-long projects, he has a very public, grueling battle with Hodgkin lymphoma.
Which is terrifying on its own.
Absolutely. And on top of that personal health crisis, he's the mayor of Niagara Falls during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah.
Niagara Falls is a city whose entire economic heartbeat is driven by global tourism.
It was an existential threat to the city. I
Yeah.
mean, the borders closed, the massive attractions shut down, hotels emptied out literally overnight.
Managing that kind of panic requires a totally different gear. You aren't just managing growth anymore, you're managing survival.
Exactly.
But he didn't lose his momentum. He just kept building the discography,
Yeah.
Adapting his leadership style to the crisis at hand.
Which brings us to a completely different kind of pressure cooker.
Okay.
If Jim Diodati represents endurance in a high-visibility global tourism hub, our 2024 Alumni Impact Award recipient represents a totally different mechanism of scaling impact.
Who are you talking about?
I'm talking about April Jeffs.
Yes. April was a 2011 40 under 40 recipient, and her trajectory is basically a masterclass in how to systematically scale public service.
It really is. She served as the mayor of the township of Waynflete for 8 years.
Wow. 8 years.
Yeah. And for anyone who hasn't experienced the realities of rural governance, it operates on a totally different wavelength than a major city.
Oh, for sure.
During her time as mayor, she simultaneously sat on the Niagara Regional Council, where she co-chaired the Public Health and Social Services Committee and was the vice chair of the Budget Committee.
I always think of rural leadership as being a lot like running a startup on an absolute shoestring budget,
That's a good way to put it.
but with one major catch. It's
Yeah.
like, every single one of your customers knows exactly where you live.
That is painfully accurate. The buffer between you and the public simply doesn't exist.
Accountability is immediate, and it is right in your face. You can't hide behind a slick PR team or a chief of staff.
No, definitely not.
If the snow isn't plowed on a back road, or if municipal taxes go up by a fraction of a percent, you aren't just getting an angry email. You are going to hear about it in the grocery store aisle from your neighbor that exact same afternoon.
Exactly. The resources are incredibly tight, and the margin for error is practically zero.
Yeah.
And this raises a really important question about how leaders build their capacity. What's fascinating about April is how she took that intense, hyper-local grassroots pressure and used it as a training ground.
Like a proving ground for bigger things.
Right. Masterfully managing scarce resources in Waynfleet prepared her for the intensely complex, large-scale fiscal discussions she would later face at the regional council.
That makes total sense. If you know how to stretch a single dollar at the township level to keep the community running, you bring a deeply grounded, practical perspective when you're suddenly looking at multi-million-dollar regional public health budgets.
Exactly. And the leap she took following her municipal service proves her ability to scale.
What did she do next?
Well, she transitioned into broader provincial and federal advocacy. She chaired the Niagara Parks Commission, guiding one of the most culturally and environmentally significant public assets in the region.
That's a massive portfolio.
It is. And today, she is the Senior Government Relations Advisor at Brock University.
That is a wildly deliberate career progression. It's the evolution of impact in real time.
Yeah.
She didn't just stay in one lane.
No, she didn't.
She took the core skills forged in that intense rural crucible and applied them to a larger and larger and larger stage.
Step by step.
But here's where it gets really interesting for me. Both Jim and April demonstrate leadership scaling through highly visible public political roles.
True.
But our next recipient proves that profound systemic impact can actually be entirely non-political.
Ah, yes. That brings us to our 2025 recipient, Madam Justice Leanne Eastandrick.
Let's look at her timeline. She was called to the bar in 1998. She spent over 2 decades building this incredibly distinguished career as a senior partner.
Right.
She specialized in labor and employment law, human rights, and dispute resolution. In the legal community, she built a rock-solid reputation for fairness, extreme precision, and ethical leadership.
Which is so important in that field.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then in 2021, she reaches what almost anyone would consider the absolute pinnacle of the legal profession. She is appointed as a judge of the Ontario Superior Court of Justice,
Where she now oversees incredibly complex civil and criminal matters. The intellectual stamina required for that role is staggering.
I can't even imagine.
And alongside all of this, she has maintained a massive portfolio of community governance. She's worked with Hockey Canada, the YMCA, and dedicated countless hours to mentoring future legal professionals.
Okay, I actually want to push back here a little bit.
Sure, go ahead.
When we usually picture leaders in the context of an achievement award, we picture the highly vocal, front-of-the-room visionaries,
Like the loud voices.
Yeah, we picture the CEO rallying the sales team or the mayor giving a rousing emotional speech during a crisis. But the role of a judge is fundamentally different.
That's true.
A judge must be impartial. They have to be reserved. By definition, they are meant to be objective and removed from the fray. So how does that fit the traditional mold of leadership that the AIA is celebrating?
I'm so glad you brought this up. Because looking at Leanne's career forces us to completely reframe our understanding of what leadership actually is.
Okay.
We are so conditioned by business culture to think of leadership as volume. We think the leader is just the loudest voice in the room.
Right, the person with the microphone.
Exactly. But Leanne's impact isn't about volume, it's structural. She represents leadership through accountability and integrity.
It's like, oh, I've got it. If the community is computer, Jim and April are the flashy applications that everyone interacts with.
I like where you're going with this.
But Leanne is the operating system, running quietly in the background, making sure the entire device doesn't crash.
That's a brilliant way to phrase it. Think about the justice system. It is the core operating system upon which our entire society functions. Upholding that system quietly, steadily, and fairly over decades is an immense, essential form of leadership. Without that structural integrity, none of the visible, public-facing successes are even possible.
And the mentoring aspect is huge, too. She isn't just handing down rulings from the bench in a vacuum. She's actively connecting with the next generation of legal professionals.
Which is a hallmark of sustained impact. True leaders, the ones who leave a legacy, always make sure to leave the door open for the people coming up behind them.
Absolutely.
Her career is living proof that you do not need to be a politician or a loud, charismatic visionary to shape your community. You can do it through the rigorous, ethical, and quiet application of the law.
So we've looked at the entrepreneur turned mayor, the rural mayor turned regional strategist, and the lawyer turned judge.
Quite the lineup.
Which brings us right to the present moment. And honestly, I don't envy the position BusinessLink Media Group is in right now.
Yeah.
Because the burden of choice for the 2026 Alumni Impact Award is massive.
It is a monumental task. The selection committee is currently staring down that pool of over 900 past 40 under 40 recipients to find our next honoree.
Just visualize the sheer volume of success sitting in that pile of files. You are looking at 900 of the most driven, ambitious, and successful people in Southern Ontario.
Right. It's an entire generation of business and community leaders.
And the committee has to pick just one.
And this is where we have to fiercely protect the core philosophy of the award.
Right. The criteria.
The committee isn't looking for the most visible success. They aren't scanning the files to see who simply made the most money last year or who hired the best PR firm to get their name in the paper.
They are listening for that quiet, steady hum of sustained influence.
Exactly. They're looking for the through line. Who took the raw promise of their youth and carefully wove it into the permanent fabric of the region over the long haul?
Wow.
Who built a discography that actually matters?
It really makes you stop and reflect on your own path, doesn't it?
It absolutely should. In fact, I challenge everyone listening right now to evaluate your own career trajectory through this exact lens.
What should they ask themselves?
Ask yourself a hard question. Are you just chasing the next shiny milestone? Are you jumping from one debut album to another, chasing early hype without ever doing the hard work of building a cohesive body of work?
That's tough.
Or are you building sustainable momentum? Are you leading with the kind of intention and adaptability that can weather a 20-year storm?
That is the ultimate gut check. Are you building a career that is just a random collection of isolated wins? Or are you weaving a continuous thread of impact?
Exactly.
Well, the anticipation is definitely building internally here at BusinessLink, and we are thrilled to announce that the 2026 Alumni Impact Award recipient will be officially revealed on May 28th.
I can't wait.
It is all happening at the 23rd Annual Niagara 40 Under 40 Business Achievement Awards ceremony. It is going to be an incredible night where we celebrate both the emerging leaders of today and the sustained, hard-fought impact of our alumni.
It's always the highlight of the year for us. Seeing the new class of winners interact with the alumni is exactly why we do this.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up today's deep dive, I want to leave you with a lingering thought, a question to chew on as you go back to your desk or finish up your commute.
Let's hear it.
Imagine it's 20 years from today. Someone is looking back at your career. The initial confetti has been swept away for decades. What does your beyond chapter look like? Is it a short story about early potential? Or is it an epic, evolving narrative of impact that vastly outlasted your initial success?
That's a standard we should all be striving for.
Definitely. Thank you so much for joining us for this behind-the-scenes look inside BusinessLink Media Group. Keep building that momentum, keep adding to your discography, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.